Hi everybody, this is another part of that 18-minute video that I was talking about a while ago, but let's get down to the fair nitty-gritty of this. See, there's a couple of issues that I have with students and time management, and this video will be rightly dubbed Time Management and How to Help Your Children. Number one, when you go in as a tutor or as a teacher or as a counselor trying to help your kids out, we look for a couple of certain things. Now, from the tutoring department, here's what I look for. The top three things. Number one, how much is your child using their cell phone per day? Now, I'm not talking about time, of course, because kids will say, well, I use it to talk to my friends, and I watch music, and I do all this other stuff on my phone. I don't care. Okay, that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to say to parents and students. I don't care what you do on your phone. I care about how much you use your phone. See, the one thing that all cellular companies used to record to an extreme was data management. That meant that as a whole, whatever you're using on the phone usually uses data in what's one way, shape, or form. Nowadays, we've got Snapchat, Pandora, YouTube, that all these kids like really listening into. So, when I go over to a kid's house and I take a look at their phone, I look at the data usage. You can go under settings and cellular and see how much data the kids are actually using. If your child is using over 10 gigabytes a month, there is something wrong. Okay? That means that they're spending way too much time on their cell phone. Your child does not need over 10 gigabytes of YouTube. Your child does not need over 10 gigabytes of Netflix. Your child does not need over 10 gigabytes worth of Pandora. Now, keep in mind that, of course, there are some restrictions to this if your child is using the phone in the car for an actual music purpose because your car doesn't actually have a decent audio system. Or if you have an insanely long trip and you're watching a ton of Netflix, that's another story coming all together. So be respectful as to what they're doing. But the average user uses about 10 gigs a month. I'm not the average user. I use roughly 50. If another child is contesting my 50 gigabytes, there is something wrong. Parents, how do we fix this? Be a parent, please. Delete the apps and set up parental restrictions on each phone. You can delete the YouTube app. You can delete the Snapchat app. You can delete the Instagram app. I've seen a kid that used over 50 gigs on just YouTube. To give you a decent comparison, 50 gigs worth of YouTube is my allocation on Netflix alone, and I watch Netflix every single day for about 2 hours. Now, keep in mind, of course, this is spread out throughout the day, but that's another story for another time. I'm out of high school. They're not. Snapchat. I've seen people use over 25 gigs for Snapchat. What are they doing? They're just sending videos left and right of stupid stuff. Get it done. Get it out of the way. Finish it. If you don't want to set up parental restrictions on the phone, get a parental guidance app. There's plenty of them. You can download it onto your kid's phone. You can run it for a modest fee. And when that app sees that somebody else is using an app, then it will send you a message. You can block it. You can check the text messages. You can see who the text messages are going to. Be the parent and get rid of the apps. They don't need it. And if you're that concerned about somebody using a phone for an extended period of time, get them a flip phone. Text messaging, phone, done. You can buy them for 25 to 40 bucks at your local store. Beside the point, they're called burner phones. Moving on. So, next part of that. If you're really concerned, ask. Ask somebody who knows about technology, who can get you down into this. If you want to ask me to make a video about how to set up parental restrictions on a phone, I'll be more than happy to. By all means, that's what I do on a day-to-day anyways. You would imagine how your kids would react to when somebody takes away their cell phone privileges. See, that's going to be part of another video that I'm going to make in the future about self-entitlement. But let's move on to the next part. Number 2. I asked the parents, how long does your child study for? Now, of course, they'll say they come home, they study, then they eat, then they study some more, they do chores, and then they go to bed. That's their day-to-day basis. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about quality study time. Here's a fair example. Well, I come home from school at about 2:30, and then I start studying about 3:30, dinner's at 5, and then I move my way on to chores, and then I do some homework, and then I go to bed about 10. Okay, let's be frank, just for a moment. Let's be frank as possible. You're coming home at 2:30, starting at 3:30, having dinner at 5. There's a problem with that already. Most kids, when they start at 3:30 and dinner's at 5, that means that you've got 1 hour of decent study time and a half an hour of them complaining that they're hungry. It happens. Trust me. Watch that curve of attention. You start them off, they're like, hey, I'm going to hit the books, no problem. And then they actually sit down and they start studying. And then as soon as you put on that stove, as soon as you put on that oven and that smell of food just starts wafting through the house, nobody can study in that. It's ridiculous. Let's talk about afterwards. Oh my goodness. Then after dinner, I go over and study. Nobody studies right after dinner. You talk with your family. You're usually having to do chores like, oh, the dishes, taking out the trash, etc., etc. That's not quality study time. Parents, if you're really that concerned about your children's study time, set them up, put them off to the side, have a to-do list, and make them do that to-do list. And if they have chores, make sure they do that afterwards. If you're really concerned about it, put the dinner time a couple hours ahead. Kids don't need to eat exactly at 5. They can eat at 6. They can eat at 7. The longer that you delay dinner, between the time they get home to actual dinner, they'll actually study more. And also, if you think that your child can't study at the house because, I don't know, Super Bowl Sunday's coming up, we've got preseason games coming up, and somebody's watching TV in the house, what, to tell them to go to the room? They're probably on the phone in the room. If you're that concerned, there's libraries. There's study centers. There are coffee shops. Don't think that a coffee shop is a bad place to study. It may be loud, it may be noisy, but those kids put the headphones right in their ears and they start studying. And if you're afraid something's going to happen to your child, activate the GPS on their phone and have your phone able to track their phone. There's plenty of apps to do it. If you're that concerned about what your child's going to use when they're in a coffee shop or in a library, put a parental guidance app on the phone. We've already talked about this, folks. Now, I do understand that on occasions that it is impossible for a child to leave the home and not have all those distractions for whatever way, shape, or form. If that is the case, set up some time for you to sit down, the parent, and do the work that you have to do along with the child. That way it shows that you are supposed to be at a productive moment in time. What do? Pay your bills. If you don't want to pay your bills, set up your schedule. If you don't want to set up your schedule, set up your kid's schedule. How about that? Make sure that the kid's test dates are on track. Make sure you know what the kid has to do. Number 3, the really, really big thing that I look for does not involve cell phones. Does not involve study areas. It involves how much time do you think your kid really needs to study? See, this is a mentality that most people can't fight with their kids. Their kids think that they have to study some certain period of hours. Myself personally, I run on the college system. For every 3 hours that you have of study time, you should have 1 hour worth of class. Now in college, 15 units often means 15 hours in school. So that means 15 hours corresponds to 45 hours worth of study throughout the week. Throughout the week, not per day, folks. It's impossible to do it per day. So if you have 2 classes in one day, they're roughly an hour apiece. You spend 6 hours studying, but I've got a job and I can't necessarily do that. Then find time on the weekends. And studying does not mean doing homework. Studying means that you're using items to help you study. Children don't understand this. They don't. And they never will unless you, the parent, put your foot down and say, look, you need to study, but I've done all my homework. Write flashcards. Write outline sheets. Do something other than sitting on your tuchus, playing on your Xbox One or PS4 console or your Wii. Or watching Snapchat, Instagram, Clash Royale. Stop it. Do something other than that. But why? I mean, I did all my homework. Studying does not mean doing homework. Homework is not study time. Let me say it again. Homework is not study time. Homework is practice time. Study time means that you're doing something that you need to do because you need to memorize something or because you need to understand something. Get it done. Reading a book during homework time is technically study time because you're going to use that to write essays, which would actually be part of your homework. Or an essay in class, technically, but that's beside the point. I'm a math teacher. So, moving along in this topic. Number 1, check how much data they're using. Number 2, check the quality of time that they're using. And number 3, for the love of goodness gracious, please have it down with your kid that when you're in high school and you're trying to study, studying does not mean homework. If you're in school about 6 hours a day, we're not expecting you to study 18 hours a week. Here's the final expectation. You should be roughly spending about 4 hours a day studying, 28 hours a week if you are in high school. That does not mean homework time for 28 hours. That means actually sitting down for 28 hours. That's 4 hours a day, folks. That includes Saturdays and Sundays. If your kid doesn't want to study throughout the week, allocate it to the weekend. This is sound rather harsh, but as a whole, this is how I look at students and how I enforce my policies. And my students have, for the most part, been successful. There are some rare cases where people don't take my advice and they have to suffer the consequences later. But the sooner we adapt our mentality to help our kids' future, the sooner that your child succeeds. If you'd like to see more of these self-help videos or have a suggestion for a self-help video, please subscribe below and put into the comments box, and I'll be glad to make a video or rant of your choosing at a time that I can. Thank you.